This episode of Trek Geeks is brought to you exclusively by Eagle Moss and the official Star Trek Discovery Starships Collection, officially authorized by CBS Studios. Subscribe today and receive the USS Shenzhou for only $9.95 with free shipping. For additional information on this incredible collection, please visit eaglemoss.com/discovery starships.
Hi, this is Andy Robinson, Elam Garrick on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you are listening to the biggest little podcast this side of the Gamma Quadrant. It's the Trek Geeks podcast with Dan Davidson and Bill Smith. Failure to tune in would not sit well with the Obsidian Order.
From the security office at Deep Space Nine and Podfleet Command, it's the biggest little show this side of the Alpha Quadrant, your independent Star Trek podcast. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Trek Geeks. I'm your co-host, Bill Smith, and thank you so much for joining us. We kind of had an impromptu week off last week because, well, we decided to enjoy the long holiday weekend with our families. And, of course, by we, I do mean my co-host and I. He's somebody I would not hesitate to lock in Odo's detention cell in a heartbeat and just let him sit there forever and ever and ever. He's the largely incarceratable Dan Davidson. And Dan, I realize I just created an adjective there, but I'm going with it, buddy. Welcome aboard.
It's good to be here, Bill. Thanks.
I was wondering if you're going to try to do the entire show in all Odo grunts. I wasn't sure.
I'll throw a few in there, I think, but I would never try to impede on Renee's awesomeness that is Odo.
And happy birthday to Renee. He had a birthday just last week. Hard to believe the guy is 78. He is just so amazing, and we love him to death.
I miss him. I wish that we could see more of him in Star Trek somehow, but we will be able to hear him in the new Star Trek Online game. Oh, I think I gave a little spoiler.
Is that spoiler? Hashtag spoiler alert. Hashtag Dan sucks.
Wow. Thanks, pal.
I mean, hey, buddy. Well, speaking of Renee, we have a fantastic topic tonight. And like we said at the end of the last episode, number 140, this is, of course, episode 141, you can't talk about one of these characters without bringing the other end of the conversation.
No, you can't. You know, along the lines of Kirk and Spock, or Spock and McCoy, or Bill and Dan, there is always Odo and Quark. As we celebrate the 25th anniversary of Deep Space Nine, how can we not have a special episode dedicated to these two characters that, for me, were the heart and soul of the show, aside from Sisko. I love Odo. He is actually my all-time favorite character in Star Trek, to be honest. So I'm thrilled that we're going to be talking about these two characters. And I don't know if I mean that as in Star Trek characters or just two funny characters. Odo and Quark here today, Bill. I'm looking forward to it.
I think that's interesting. I think I vaguely remember you saying Odo is your favorite character in the whole of Star Trek, but I think maybe we'll deep dive on that a little more as the episode progresses. Speaking of deep diving, Dan, people may want to tell us their thoughts on Odo or Quark, or Odo and Quark, or maybe even Quark and Odo. And how could they do that to us?
Well, there's a whole bunch of ways, Bill. It's very easy to do. All you need to do is head on over to trekgeeks.com/contact, and you'll find a whole bunch of ways that you can send us information. And believe me, Bill and I want to hear from every single one of you. You can leave us a voicemail, you can Skype chat us, or you can even fill out that contact form and leave us a message about anything that might be on your mind. And please do take advantage of those different ways. Plus, don't forget, you can click on the big blue button on the right-hand side of the website and leave us a voice message using SpeakPipe. And as we talk about every single week, we love it to death. Please join our official Facebook group, Camp Kittimer. There's great things happening over there all the time. Star Trek talk, pictures, polls. Yes, our Friday commute celebration. We took last week off, but we got something really good in store for this coming week. You're going to get early access to episodes of the Trek Geeks podcast before they're ever released to everyone else. So to join the group, just head on over to facebook.com/groups/Camp Kittimer. Heather, Jackie, or Dan will let you right on in, and we can't wait to see you over there. But please remember that any messages or comments you leave us in any of these places, Quark, may be used in a future episode. That was horrible.
It actually wasn't too bad. It was better than your dinosaur, which people will hear in the outtake later. But it's interesting, you brought up Camp Kittimer as you always do. And Dan, we had 13 brand new campers join this week, and we are closing in on 1,000 members in Camp Kittimer. So we thank everybody for being a part of the discussion and for loving Trek and for helping to create a positive environment that's as troll-free as possible. We should hit 1,000 probably within the next couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to it, buddy.
That's really amazing. And I got to say, not because it's our own Star Trek group, but I got to say, it really is my favorite place on Facebook with all of the different groups that I'm a part of. This one's my favorite because the people that are in there are genuine Star Trek fans. Like you said, there's no trolling, there's no negativity, there's no politics. It's fun Star Trek conversation, and the people in there are awesome. I love every one of them, and I did not realize we were that close to 1,000. So that's really something I'm very honored and proud to be part of the group, and I look forward to the next 1,000 people.
Likewise. And something else that we're proud of, Dan, a little bit of a housekeeping item. At the beginning of today's episode, people probably heard something just a little different. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But as of June 4th, 2018, Trek Geeks and our other podcast, Discovering Trek, are now productions of Coconut Media Works. After 3 years, we decided to form our own company to produce quality podcast entertainment. We haven't been acquired. We haven't been bought out. Coconut Media Works is Bill and Dan, and this is something that we're really excited to be doing.
Could it be Dan and Bill, or is it Bill and Dan? Anyway, that's okay.
It could be, yeah, sure.
No, but the most important thing, though, is that nothing about Trek Geeks or Discovering Trek is going to change. There are no plans at this time to expand the podcast offerings of Coconut Media Works in any way.
And in the very near future, Coconut Media Works will also debut a website portal called trekpodcasts.com for Star Trek podcast discovery to benefit all Star Trek podcasts currently producing episodes, regardless of who produces the content. It's not just going to be our podcasts. It'll be a directory of any Star Trek podcast that just wants to be part of it.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And as you can tell, Bill and I are just so excited at this evolution of our podcast. And we look forward to sharing the future of Coconut Media Works with our listeners. So with that, live long and prosper. And of course, Coconut!
Dan, it's time for the news from TrekNews.net. Spanning the Alpha Quadrant. For all the news on all the Star Treks, yo. It's TrekNews.net. Online at treknews.net. And Dan, really briefly, we mentioned earlier the little different thing that people heard at the beginning of the podcast. Our sincere thanks go out to Barry DeFord, our dear friend Barry DeFord, co-host of Politics over in the Tricorder Transmissions network of podcasts, for creating our little musical coconut stinger that you hear or will now hear at the beginning and end of every episode of Trek Geeks and Discovering Trek. I asked Barry if he would like to help us out, and he jumped at the chance. And I thank him sincerely, and I think it adds something a little fun to Trek Geeks.
It does. It's perfect, Barry. You did a great job with it. It sounds like something from Trek Geeks or Discovering Trek. It just fits perfectly. You did a kick-ass job, and we can't thank you enough for it, man.
So on to the news. Dan, Carl Urban is going to be headlining Trekonderoga, which I assure you is not easy to say, this year at the original series set tour in, wait for it, Ticonderoga, New York.
Trekonderoga. See, I could say without a problem, man. So, just saying. Yes, great news that this is happening. It's going to be August 24th through the 26th of this year, 2018. Exciting news for Carl Urban and any of his fans. For more information, just head right on over to StarTrekTour.com. And as many people know, Captain Kirk, William Shatner, was there recently. And from all accounts, the event was a huge success.
I think it's great that Carl Urban is going to the tour. There, lives inside me the possibility of being concerned that he may cancel, because Carl still works a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And he's had to cancel multiple appearances at STLV in various years. So I'm hoping that his schedule stays clear. I'm hoping that everybody that drives up to upstate New York to see this has a great time. I think it's the weekend before Labor Day weekend, if I'm not mistaken. But there is no way in hell I'm going to be able to go, even though it's only a few hours from our front door.
Yeah, I hear you there. What I think is amazing is like we said, Shatner was there recently. Carl's going to be there. I see this as being something where a lot of the big Trek names will eventually wind up. It gives the East Coast folks something to look forward to and go visit, because like you said, it's not very far from we are in New Hampshire. So I think it's great. Good luck to all the folks up there in Ticonderoga, and we'll see what happens next.
There are literally 2 hotels in Ticonderoga, unless you want to stay in Vermont, and that's not an exaggeration. So if you're going to Ticonderoga, book early. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Dan, next up in news, Star Trek Bridge Crew The Next Generation is now available as a downloadable expansion. I think this is really cool.
This is very cool. Have you played the TOS version? I have not.
I have not, only because I don't necessarily have a VR rig.
Yeah, I'm thinking I got to get one of these. I've actually tried to talk my wife into getting a PS4, but it just hasn't gone over yet. Yes, Ubisoft released the first downloadable expansion for Star Trek Bridge Crew, and now folks can be on the bridge of the NCC 1701 Delta Yo from The Next Generation. PS4 players are going to be able to command the USS Enterprise D, where you're going to face challenges all the way from the Romulans and the Borg. So that's very cool. I can't wait to try this. VR has come such a long way since it was first introduced in, like, I don't know, the Lawnmower Man or something like that. But this expansion also introduces a new command role, which we did not see in the TOS version. You can either play operations, and you can play modes called ongoing voyages or patrol and resistance. So lots of stuff coming out for this VR. And from what I hear, it's pretty awesome.
I'm still laughing.
Pull that one right out of the keister.
Oh my God, that movie is so terrible too. I'm hoping that there's something at STLV that lets you try this out.
Oh yeah,
because I think that would be really fantastic. We hoped for that last year, and it didn't quite happen, I don't believe. So maybe they'll bring it this year. Who knows? I hope that there's a Deep Space Nine expansion at some point. Absolutely. With the Defiant and the Dominion. I think that would be fantastic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to that too. Thanks.
Dan, Zachary Quinto, he who plays Spock in the Kelvin Timeline movies, confirms that there will be a 4th Star Trek movie if things keep going the way they are.
Yeah, he was recently on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and did talk about Star Trek. He said, quote, "I know more now than I knew a few weeks ago, which is that there will be a 4th movie if we stay on track where we are. I think there's going a movie before." Okay, that's a bad quote. I'm not going to reread that quote because it's all screwed up. But needless to say, Zachary said, yeah, there's going to be a Star Trek 4 as long as things stay on course. So there you go. The quote that I'm reading from the website does not have grammatical correction in it, which is something that I'm used to because I'm me. But yeah, I couldn't read that right. So there you go.
I think the real takeaway here is that you are criticizing the grammatical structure of a sentence.
Yes, I writes good and reads better. So yeah,
and we're leaving that in because it's a great podcasting. That's what I'm here to tell you.
No edits.
I think it's not a surprise that there's going to be a fourth movie. And before people scream, it's not Star Trek 4, that's the one with the whales. It's the fourth movie in the Kelvin timeline. It is colloquially referred to as Star Trek 4. So, barring them announcing there aren't going to be any more Star Trek films, I think we're going to keep seeing Star Trek films with this cast, and I'm happy about that.
I'm extremely happy about that. It's no secret that I love the Kelvin timeline. I love what this cast has done with the Star Trek movies. I love the stories. I love the special effects. And I love the fact that these people who have brought us these movies are excited that there's going to be another movie. It's one thing when the fans are excited, but it's another thing when you hear people like Zachary talking on a talk show about how he's excited that there's going to be another movie and that it's finally going to be directed by a female. I think that's fantastic also.
I do too. And Dan, lastly, in news, we have a bit of a statement, and I'm just going to run with this. And if you want to chime in afterwards, that's perfectly fine. Sure. It has come to our attention that the volunteers, the Hollywood Sci-Fi Museum and the Hollywood Horror Museum have resigned en masse a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about these museums with their founder, Houston Huddleston, in episode 35 of this podcast. The volunteers resigned because they discovered that Mr. Huddleston was not on a long vacation as they had been told, but rather Mr. Huddleston had been in a Los Angeles County jail facility after being arraigned on charges related to child pornography. Specifically, the 3 charges against him relate to the coercion of minors to appear in child pornography, production of child pornography, and possession of child pornography. Now, as if those charges aren't alarming enough, in the past few days, we've read a lot of conjecture regarding the museums and some of the decisions made by Mr. Huddleston. We don't know if they're true or not. And honestly, it's not up to us to make that decision. But it does give us significant cause for concern on a number of levels, enough to question the veracity of the museums themselves. The decision to remove content from Trek Geeks and its feed doesn't happen often, and it's never an easy decision. But I can promise you that it's always done with our audience in mind. Dan and I talked about this, and we've made the decision to remove Houston Huddleston's episode from our podcast feed so that it can no longer be downloaded. We made this decision because the episode does promote the museums and the hope that Star Trek fans will donate money to it. And that's not something we're comfortable with today.
Yes, agreed. Also, just to point out, on May 24th, 2018, we reached out to the Hollywood Sci-Fi Museum via email for a statement regarding the future of the museum and also on Mr. Huddleston's alleged incarceration and his status on the board. And as of this recording, we have yet to receive a reply to our request.
Now, of course, Mr. Huddleston is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. His jury trial is presently scheduled to occur this month in Los Angeles, and we can only hope that the jury considers the evidence fairly and impartially to render a just verdict. It's never easy to pull an episode, and it's something you and I talked about. It wasn't a long conversation because we both were pretty set that, yeah, we should pull this because it's not appropriate anymore. I don't know what the future of these museums are. Their social media pages are still online, but seeing an entire list of volunteers, some of which are people we know, decide to resign because they didn't know what was going on, was enough to give me great cause for concern.
Oh, I definitely agree. Like you said, it was a conversation that was very short, and we felt it would be better in the interest of our podcast and of our fans to pull it. Based on the fact that we don't know what's going to happen now with these museums. It has nothing to do specifically with the fact that these charges are pending against Mr. Huddleston. But like you said, we're promoting these museums and we're asking people to donate to them in this episode. And with everything in limbo the way it is right now, and people who even worked for the museums on a volunteer basis, not knowing what's going on, we felt it was the best decision to make. So we did.
We can only hope that the pieces that the museum has are put on display somewhere, hopefully by the museum or perhaps by some other museum in the future, because they deserve to be seen and fans deserve to get a chance to look at them, especially because there were people who donated to that end. So that really sums up all we pretty much want to say about it. Here's hoping that that justice, rules the day and everything is fair.
Absolutely.
Dan, I'm sitting here with the USS Shenzhou in my hands, And it reminds me that we want to take a few minutes to tell everybody about the official Star Trek Discovery Starships collection from our friends at Eagle Moss Collections, because, man, these things are gorgeous.
They are gorgeous. I'll tell you about my Shenzhou in just a second, but they are officially authorized by CBS Studios, and this special collection features brand new ship concepts and designs from the first season of CBS's Star Trek Discovery. Each one of these models has gone through extensive reference study and has been reproduced under the supervision of Star Trek expert Ben Robinson for accuracy and detail. And as we recently talked about on Twitter, he has probably the best job on the planet Earth. So that's pretty cool.
Don't say that to John Van Sitters.
I was going to say that next, but you beat me to it. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice about these ships when you receive your first one, which is the USS Shenzhou NCC 1227, is that they're pretty big. They are almost 8 inches from the front of the saucer to the rear of the warp nacelles. They are beautiful. They are made of die-cast metal and ABS materials, and they are hand-painted with reference to the actual CG models that are used in production of the show.
You know, the thing I love about the Shenzhou is how many hard lines it has. You know, you look at the original Enterprise, and it doesn't have very many hard lines. There's lots of cylindrical type things, whether it's the secondary hull or the warp nacelles. And the Shenzhou just has angles, and I like it very much in the same way I like the refit Enterprise from the motion picture. To me, it's a beautiful ship, and I love the underslung bridge. But Dan, each of these ships, each of them comes also with the infamous Eagle Moss display base, which I love. Infamous Eagle Moss display base, which I absolutely love because it makes it look like your ship is just sitting there right in front of you in space. And it also comes with one of those amazing collector's magazines featuring behind-the-scenes info, original design sketches, and, of course, a breakdown of in-universe technology on board. Wow, I felt like Beaker there for a minute. The first ship in the collection, the USS Shenzhou NCC 1227, is available to subscribers for only $9.95 with free shipping at eaglemoss.com/discovery starships. I am amazed at that price every time I tell people about it. It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And I love the Shenzhou. I love the Discovery, which is another one of the ships that you're going to get as a subscriber to this collection, NCC 1031. I'm going to talk about that one for just a second. I have that one at my work, at my desk, as you know. And Bill, when I started working with you, you got me a cube gift of the USS Enterprise NCC 1701, the large model. So what do I have right now at my desk? I have them nose to nose, just like in the final scene of Star Trek Discovery this year. It's awesome. I love it. Now, there was word earlier this year that Eagle Moss is going to have the Discovery version of the Enterprise someday. We're going to go crazy when that is really coming out and ready, but we'll save that for a later time. But in addition to the Discovery, also the USS Kerala NCC 1255 is going to be available, as well as the reimagined Klingon Bird of Prey. It's going to ship. They're going to ship monthly, Bill, at 20% off the standard retail price for subscribers. And get this, they too are going to come with free shipping. Now,
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I know, right? Subscribers are also entitled to free gifts that are worth over $100. You can cancel your subscription at any time, but why would you want to? And for full details, just head right on over to eaglemoss.com/discovery starships.
Now, of course, fans who want to purchase their favorite ships individually may do so either online at shop.eaglemoss.com or at your local comic book shop for the regular price. But don't forget to subscribe. That's really where the value is, and that's eaglemoss.com/discovery starships. And we truly thank Eagle Moss and the official Star Trek Discovery Starships collection for sponsoring this week's episode. Dan, Odo and Quark. This is something that I've been looking forward to talking about for a while. Two incredibly different characters, and two characters I can't possibly see without one another as part of their character arcs. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. There would not have been these characters without the other. Now, I'm going to start off right off the bat with saying a couple of things. I was not sure I was going to want to have a Ferengi on Deep Space Nine as a regular character based on what we saw with Ferengi in TNG. So I was very nervous about that. And I have to say that at first, it's kind of weird how things changed. I was more interested and happy with what I was seeing from Quark than what I was seeing from Odo in the first couple of episodes, which is kind of strange because Odo was my all-time favorite character.
That is interesting to me. You know, the thing that I think I had the most trepidation about was the guy from Benson being in Star Trek. You know, because on Benson, Rene Auberjonois played Clayton Endicott III, the kind of smarmy lawyer. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I never put two and two together because, you know, I was a kid when Benson was out. But I realized, hey, that guy with the funny name is playing the shapeshifter. I don't know.
Yep.
But it was, I feel silly now for having that concern because, you know, as you said, Rene has created a character that is pretty much universally loved in Star Trek. And kind of, it was really different from the other characters searching for their humanity that we'd seen before.
I remember when I first started to love the character of Odo. Now, first of all, like I said a minute ago, I wasn't too keen on him at first. I didn't think the makeup looked right. And then all of a sudden he turned into the Terminator from Terminator 2 when he got all gooey. And I was like, oh, okay, so those are pretty cool special effects. So I started taking an interest in him. Now, the reason I love Odo so much, and you're probably going to laugh at this because I don't think I've ever told you this before, Bill.
Okay.
I love Odo because he is the type of guy that I would want to hang out with because he's the type of guy who doesn't want to hang out with anybody. That's the.
So wait a second. So for all of the things there are to like about Odo, you like him because he's a shut-in.
I guess you could say that. Yeah. I just love the way that he always wants to keep to himself, but at the same time, there's just this quality about him that I just want to hang with him. And he's the type of guy, I mean, he'd be a better friend than you, I think, most of the time because he's just cool. You know what I mean? Buddy?
No, I don't.
I gotta give huge props to Rene for what he does for the character because he makes him lovable when he's not trying to be lovable. And there's just something about that gruffness in the character that I just always loved from the time that I'm like, okay, this character is kind of growing on me. And it just grew and grew and grew all through the series.
Well, I think there's something about Odo's journey. You know, he's not necessarily looking to understand humanity. He's looking to understand himself and his place in the world. And I think that's a little different than some of the alien characters that we've seen before. You know, when season 1 starts, he knows that he's come from somewhere near the Denorius belt, but really doesn't know much more than that. And you can tell that it's something that he needs to know and that it drives him. And not necessarily his sense of justice. I mean, that's the role he assumes on the station, but he's got this vacuum, you know, this hole in his life because he doesn't know what he is, or he doesn't know where he's from. And I can imagine that that's pretty off-putting to anybody. I mean, imagine waking up one day and realizing you're with these people that look nothing like you and you have no idea where you're from. And that's pretty much an amazing journey when you think of where Odo's come from.
It is an amazing journey where he's come from and all the things he went through before we actually got to see him as a character on the show. And I don't want to go too far ahead into what our discussion is going to be about, but all the things that Odo and Quark went through before we actually ever met them. There's quite a history between them because they were both on the station for quite a long time, since before the Cardassians left and everything. So there's a lot of history, but I'm talking about specifically the laboratory rat that he was, earlier in his life when nobody knew what he was and he was just an unknown sample, quote unquote. He's been through the ringer for a long time, and I don't know if wearing it on his sleeve is the right word, but it's certainly something that he makes people aware of in the way that he acts.
Come on, Dan. Odo doesn't have sleeves.
I see what you did there.
Well, I mean, he does in season 5, but that's a different story. You know, and then I think about Quark. I mean, you mentioned at the top of the discussion, I too had real trepidation over a Ferengi being a member of the regular cast, because up until then in Next Gen, the Ferengis were comic relief, or they were a punchline, or they were something for Riker to get annoyed at, Because let's face it, anytime the Ferengi come on screen, Riker cops that attitude. And I think the human characters do in general. Sisko even kind of does in several first season episodes of Deep Space Nine over, Jake's relationship with Nog. But I think that one of the things that I really have to credit Armin with is how he helped turn around the Ferengi. He really kind of redeemed them as a concept and as an alien race single-handedly. And it's all with Quark, because Quark isn't comic relief. I mean, there are times where Quark is funny, but Quark is a bit of a scoundrel.
Mm-hmm.
He's got his hands in everything and nothing at the same time. And he's trying to be underhanded and still maintain a business on the station and not get too deep into the pit, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I'll tell you what, that's something I'd love to have a conversation with Armin about someday if we're ever able to talk to him. We saw him as the first Ferengi ever. And like you said, the Ferengi, I don't want to be mean, but Ferengi were a joke on TNG. I just really did not like any of the Ferengi episodes. They were supposed to be the bad guys of TNG. And in that first episode, The Last Outpost, they're just like, really? They're these little dudes with these funny whips and they can't talk right and they got funny teeth. I just didn't care for them. And as TNG evolved into their 7 seasons, any episode with the Ferengi just really never did it for me. But then Armin took over as Quark. And what I wanted to ask him, if we ever had the opportunity, is, did you say to the folks at Deep Space Nine, look, I played a Ferengi. I want to develop the Ferengi in this way, and I think it's going to work. And he did. And it works. And it just completely redoes the Ferengi on Deep Space Nine to a race that, while they still have their quarks, get it? Yeah, sorry. They're more, I don't know what the right word is, but they're respectable as an alien race in TNG. I don't know if that's the right word, but they've got a backstory because of what Armin put into this character. And I've always been very thankful to him for that.
Well, they're not the punchline anymore. I mean, yeah, there are episodes where it is kind of silly. The Nagus is one of those where you kind of roll your eyes at the Nagus a little bit, but Wallace Shawn is amazing in that role. You roll your eyes at some of the other Ferengi episodes. And honestly, I mean, I've said before, I tend to skip the Ferengi episodes because the ones that focus solely on the Ferengi aren't my favorite. But at the end of the day, it's still not Aquiel or the Muse, so they're worth watching. But I really think that I have to give credit to the writers too, because they invested in developing the Ferengi into something that wasn't a laughingstock. And I think that they really righted a wrong that TNG put forth and just never addressed afterward.
Yeah, and it's funny because they created this history of the Ferengi, and even in some of the things that they created, you got to wonder if it was done tongue-in-cheek and to make them look like the buffoons of the galaxy. I mean, women can't wear clothes and they can't earn profit and this, that, and the other thing. But then they came up with great ideas like Brunt and the FCA. And they came up with episodes like the Magnificent Ferengi and Gala, who's got his own moon. All of these different things. Some are like, really? And some of them are like, wow. And I think that's one of the great things about what Armin brought to the character and to the race as a whole.
Yeah, I credit Armin. I credit Ira Stephen Bear. I credit writers like, Ron Wolf and Ron Moore and Robert Hewlett Wolf and a bunch of other ones. I conflated a couple of names there. Sorry about that. Because I really think it set the stage for Quark to be on the same level as Odo. And I think that's important as we examine these two characters. Because if Quark were just the latest Ferengi laughingstock, this relationship, this dynamic, this sort of give and take with Odo and Quark would never work.
You know what's funny? You just said something that made me pause. I've always felt Odo as the bigger of the two. Does that make sense? Not size-wise, but the way that you phrased that just a minute ago made me think that, to me, they were never really on the same level. I always put Odo higher. Maybe that's just because I like Odo so much, but I'm sure there are people that thought that Quark was better than Odo. It's just interesting the way that you said that. It made me stop and think for a second.
Well, I think it's because Odo wears the white hat.
Yeah.
Odo is lawful good, and sometimes to to a fault. And Quark tests those boundaries at every turn because he knows he can. He knows at the end of the day, if he only goes so far, he's still going to get to wake up the next day and tend his bar and make his money. But if Quark had been Rom, for example, first and second season Rom, because Rom definitely changes,
Absolutely.
and we can talk about that some other
Yep.
time. If Quark had been as numbskulled as Rom, that dynamic never works. And I don't think this relationship ever happens. And I think that each of these characters loses a critical piece of themselves.
I think that's another good point, is Quark is not as dumb as he sometimes seems to be. He's very, very smart. And he's always got a plan. And even though the plan usually would blow up in his face, at least he had a plan. I mean, Rom would just be there going, "Ugh," and you just would never know what happens. Of course, he did change. Of course, I always will credit him and discredit him with the whole cloaking minefield, but that's for another day also. But you're absolutely right. I think the level of Quark's deceitfulness and ability to shirk the law just to the right point was something that maybe I didn't give enough credit in originally when I was watching the series.
Well, and the other thing too that this tells us about Odo is that there are times when Odo looks the other way.
Absolutely. Yep.
It's not that he condones what Quark does, but he also knows that if he busts Quark on something small, he's not going to get Quark on something big later on. You know, it reminds me of like the 70s cop shows where it seems like all the cops of the day knew criminals on the street and let the criminals operate as long as they gave them particular information, or, you know, were able to catch other people doing worse things. And I think on some level, Quark fits that, you know, that mold. But ultimately, if Quark can't do his things and there isn't the constant threat of Odo, again, that relationship just doesn't work.
I always found it very interesting that Odo was so big on justice, and that's his whole life is surrounded by making sure that justice is served, that he did look the other way on so many occasions where Quark could be caught, arrested, prosecuted, or whatnot, but he let it slide. And that was always an interesting part of Odo for me, that he would allow that to happen when he had such a strong set of rules for himself for justice.
Yeah, because he would be telling Nog and Jake not to, you know, loiter on the upper promenade, and yet Quark would, you know, get to run things, you know, much to Odo's chagrin and dismay, but, you know, with his sort of, you know, tacit, not really approval, but he certainly didn't do anything about it. I mean, a lack of action, you know, notes some kind of permission on some level. And there are things that Odo permitted, whether he took action or not.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I love so much about the character, because you never knew what you're going to expect when it came to Quark. With anybody else on the station, you knew exactly what Odo was going to do. He was going to follow the letter of the law, and he was going to do it the way that he felt it would be done. But when it came to Quark, you never knew which way he was going to go. And I thought that was always a great mystery of him.
Odo is such a black and white character, but there are so many shades of gray inherent in Odo that I think that's where the texture and the context lies. You know, Quark is nothing but shades of gray. You know, there are no absolutes with Quark because everything is for the right price.
Yes.
But Odo is, you know, this is good or this is bad unless ... And I think that with Quark in particular, those lines get a lot more blurry, especially as the series progresses.
I agree 100%, especially as the series progresses. I mean, there's things that happen in the later parts of the show, especially when the Dominion comes into play and Odo's questioning where his loyalties lie, whether he wants to go be part of the Great Link or stay with the Solids. It really becomes shades of gray. And I laughed because shades of gray, I always think of season of TNG, which I don't really want to think about. But yeah, you're absolutely right, man. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow, I just love it when you say I'm absolutely right. I almost don't know where to go from there, but I'm just going to revel in it and press on. I think it's safe to say that, you know, the term frenemies has existed for a long time, but Odo and Quark were frenemies before that term ever really hit people's lexicons, and certainly before it was cool. At the end of the day, these two characters, they not only need each other, in the script development process, but they need each other in their lives, because neither of them has the journey that they should have without it. Quark teaches Odo a good deal about himself. There are key points throughout the run of Deep Space Nine where Quark provides the most sound advice in the room to Odo. And it's almost kind of head scratching. It's like, wow, really? He'd do that for Odo? It's like, of course he'd do that for Odo. Odo's really the only friend he has, whether he knows it or not. And it kind of makes me smile a little bit when I think about it in those terms. Quark cares about Odo, and he may not think that that's reciprocated, but I think over time he figures out it is.
I definitely think it is. The whole idea, what you just hit the nail on the head. You're right, Bill. Okay. Sometimes when something's going on the station, Quark is the one who gives Odo the best piece of advice. Now, he may do it in a way that's insulting or makes Odo second guess himself, but he gives the right advice, and it works fantastically. And I gotta say, if I can only imagine, people joke about how Odo's always miserable. I can only imagine how miserable he would have been on that station if he didn't have someone like Quark there. You know what I mean? And it could probably be said the same way. Quark would have been more miserable, or I don't know if miserable is the right word, if he didn't have Odo to rib. I don't know.
I think you're onto something there, because the only other character that Odo has that kind of trust in, because let's face it, Odo trusts Quark with certain things, and especially some personal things. But the only other character that Odo has that level of trust in is Kira, and that doesn't happen until later in the series. Sure. Other than that, Odo pretty much feels like he's an island, and he doesn't tell Quark everything, because I think that Odo's afraid that there will be ridicule, and that I don't think he wants to risk those things about himself at various points. But if he needed a true ear and advice, Quark steps up and gives it to him on multiple occasions. And that's one of the dynamics about this relationship that I think I love the most.
One of the ones that comes to mind right away, and I think it's one of the strongest ones, is, I can't recall the episode, and forgive me, but it's when Odo's pretty mad about something with Kira not feeling for him the way he wants him to, and he's in his quarters and he's wrecking everything. And Quark shows up and stuff is broken, and Odo's, I don't know if he's starting to, get all goopy because he hasn't regenerated in a while, but they sit there and have a discussion about it. And Quark knows that Odo loves Kira. And I think that's a great example of what these two have together, even though they would never admit it to each other.
Yeah. In fact, he goes to great lengths to counsel him where Kira is concerned, because ultimately he wants Odo to be happy. I mean, there's the extra added benefit of, if Odo's concentrating on Kira, he's not going to be concentrating on Quark's activities. I mean, Quark's no dummy, but at the end of the day, I mean, the reason under the covers is that he ultimately wants Odo to be happy on some level, because, although chasing Quark makes him happy, it doesn't provide him the happiness that he's really looking for.
I got to say, when you said he's no dummy there, you sounded a little bit like the Negus. I'm not going to lie.
Well, and I almost took the opportunity to make a joke about you, but I didn't. Ooh, that's really amazing.
That's a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that as I've rewatched Deep Space Nine over and over, I mean, people talk about the relationship between, Bashir and O'Brien, and that's a good relationship. Don't get me wrong. But I think that the Odo-Quark relationship is probably one of the best relationships in all of Star Trek for these reasons that we've been talking about. Odo is it's almost like it's like the old Looney Tunes cartoon with the sheepdog and the coyote.
Hey, Ralph.
Good night, Ralph. Night, Sam. And they clock in, and it's game on. The sheepdog is going to protect the herd, and the coyote is going to try to get the sheep. And at the end of the night, they clock out, and it's like, night, Ralph. Night, Sam. And they go back to being the sort of friendly enemies or frenemies that that they are. And I really kind of look at the Odo Quark relationship through that lens sometimes. People say it's a bromance. It's not a bromance.
No, I don't.
It's very much sheepdog coyote, in my opinion.
I think that if anything, O'Brien and Bashir is a bromance. And one of the things I was going to say to your point is a lot of times when you would see O'Brien and Bashir arguing, it looked much more forced than it did when it was Odo and Quark. It's more natural with those two. And it made it to be more realistic in my mind when we're watching them. Perfect example is Hippocratic Oath with Bashir and O'Brien with the disagreement that they have on how to handle the Jem'Hadar. It seems kind of forced in a lot of that episode, but whenever you see Odo and Quark arguing, it just flows perfectly. So definitely not a bromance with those two. It's unlike you and I, my friend.
Wait, are you saying we have a bromance?
You heard me.
I know. I just can't believe my ears.
Oh, nice.
Hey-o. It's see, I lost my train of thought totally because you caught me totally off guard. I really appreciate, and this is one of the things you wanted to bring up. And really, you can't talk about this episode, or you can't talk about these two characters without this episode because it is so pivotal in their relationship, and it's the ascent.
Yes.
And we could have talked about just this episode, but I think it's important to talk about the relationship and the episode because it's so much more layered than, oh, these guys have to get through this challenge together. But this episode had to happen, and I'm so glad that the writers took this chance with these two characters.
It's one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. It is the Odo and Quark episode. Now, this is when Odo is a solid, so he's still dealing with all of that, but he finally, as he always seems to indicate, he's really wanting to put Quark behind bars, and it looks like something's going to happen with that. And of course, there's the shuttlecraft crash or the runabout. I forget what they were in. But it is a brilliant episode that not only is brilliant in what we see and what's going on, but the performances by these two guys with these two characters, it's so powerful. It's one of those episodes that I could sit and watch 4 or 5 times in a row because it's so well done. And what's so great about it is even after everything they're going through and how we're talking about right now, how they're frenemies and they have to be with each other. They won't work without one another. At the end of the episode, they both say how much they hate each other. And I think that's just one of the best parts of the episode.
Well, that is very much like us. All throughout this episode, I mean, they are taking shots at each other right and left. There's this one scene where that hatred kind of culminates. It starts off and it's like, I hate this transmitter, I hate this mountain, and most of all, I hate the Orion Syndicate for stranding us here. And it descends into yelling and name calling, and they really just let it all out at that point because this situation, this crash on this planet, and this need to get to the top of the mountain to get the transmitter higher, really tests the bond that these two characters have. Although I will say, one of my favorite scenes in this is when Quark says, don't you get it? I'm not trying to save you. I'm taking you along as emergency rations.
Yes. But one of the great parts about Quark in this episode is after that fight, and I hate you, the way he says you, how he hates most of all. Yeah. And after the broken leg on Odo when they fight, is Quark is going to die before he's going to let them not get rescued. And he goes off on his own with that equipment and climbs that mountain to save both of them, not just to save himself, which you would think that Quark would be more interested in. He's going to save both of them. I thought that was a very, very key point in the development of Quark during the series and the relationship between these two guys.
I agree. You talked a little bit about that last scene in sickbay, and it's really illustrative of the dance that these two characters go back and forth on. That hatred, fake as it may be. They call it hatred, but really what it is respect and affection on some level. It's just funny. I wanted you to know I meant every word of it. So did I. And you can't help but laugh when that scene plays out because it's just played so well by both Renee and Armin. You can tell that they are dear friends who truly enjoyed that script and the ability for those characters to be in that situation because it permeates their acting in those scenes. It is a fantastic episode. If you haven't watched The Ascent recently, you really should go back. I remember watching the preview of it the week before going, oh, that looks kind of lame.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's not lame at all. It's one of the best episodes of Deep Space Nine, hands down.
Absolutely, I agree. It's funny that you said that because I remember thinking the same thing. I'm like, ugh, this one's gonna suck, but it doesn't. It is one of the best of the entire series. Absolutely.
It's funny. I just watched it again a few weeks ago, and it was I watched it and I was still blown away by the performances of both Armin and Renee. And I respect so much what these two amazing actors have done with these characters. It's funny because, before Deep Space Nine, I used to think of Renee as, of course, the guy from Benson. And of course, I thought of Armin as the principal from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And now I can't think of them in those roles. I can't even picture them in those roles because to me, they are forever Odo and Quark and this sort of yin and yang of good and bad, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. One of the things I wanted to say, it kind of ties to that a little bit, is in this episode, there's so much drama and so much, there's hatred, I guess is a good way to call it, but there's a lot of humor in the beginning. The lip smacking and the buzzing in the shuttlecraft or runabout in the beginning, it's just so great. And they're just, getting on each other's nerves so much. It's really something. But I did want to talk about one other episode, Bill, in regards to the relationship between these two guys. And that's the series finale. A lot is given to the final scene between Odo and Kira, and he puts on a tuxedo and kind of like, drifts off into the Great Lake with his arm raised, waving goodbye to Kira. But to me, the more important goodbye is the one between Odo and Quark, which doesn't even really happen if you think about it. But it sticks in my mind whenever I think about these guys is Odo's gone into the shuttlecraft. He doesn't say goodbye or anything like that to Quark. And Kira tells him, don't worry, he thinks of you as a friend. And he raises a glass and go, that man loves me. That's the relationship between Odo and Quark. And I think that goodbye is even more heartfelt than the one between Kira and Odo at the end.
I absolutely concur with that. I've thought that ever since I watched What You Leave Behind the first time. Odo doesn't say goodbye because Odo can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because he doesn't want to. It's because he's actually unable to. I think if he could have gotten away without saying goodbye to Nerys, he might have. But there's no way that Nerys was going to let that happen. And honestly, he wouldn't have wanted to disappoint Nerys like that, but he could do this with Quark.
Sure, absolutely.
And knowing that he would try to get out of saying goodbye to Quark, I think says a lot about his affection for Quark. You're right. That's a fantastic scene. And all that man loves me thing. It's hilarious. And honestly, I find that to be a more emotional goodbye for me in this series than any of the others.
Yeah, I agree. We get to see fleeting goodbyes between the characters when that wonderful music is played during the finale with the mixture of the theme of Deep Space Nine and The Way You Look Tonight. But that one between Quark and Odo is just the one that I love more than any of them. And I got to say that for you and I, with the friendship that we have, I can guarantee you that if you go before me, I will sell your desiccated remains for the highest profit just for you, as long as you shoot me through the wormhole.
I'm going to shoot you through something. All right. You damn well better believe that. And someday when I move from New England, I'll be sure to not say goodbye. How's that?
Excellent. I can't wait. Tomorrow, I hope.
Oh, God willing, if I only believed in that kind of thing. Are there any other scenes that you can recall over the 7 years of DS9 that stand out to you as far as Odo and Quark?
Those are the ones that stand out the most. One of the other ones, and I'm going to get the wording wrong, but is when Quark is looking to do something and he needs to borrow he's scared and he needs to get a pistol that he has hidden for self-defense, and he goes to open it and it's gone, and there's a note from Rom and Odo reads and says, "Quark, I needed your gun for parts. I'll return them later, Rom." And Quark goes, "I'm gonna kill him." And Odo goes, "With what?" That's just another perfect ribbing moment between the two.
One of my favorite things is in the season 2 episode, The Circle, which is a season 2 episode 2, where Odo deputizes Quark.
Yes. Yep.
It's such a small scene. You can tell that Quark is just thrown off kilter a little bit. It's early on in the run of Deep Space Nine, and it's because Odo needs more information. So he makes Quark an official deputy and tells him to find out where the weapons are being delivered. And Quark refuses until Odo threatens to arrest him for impeding an investigation. And it's a wonderful irony that he's threatening to arrest the guy he's about to deputize.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's funny. Another one that I just thought of is the episode where Quark becomes a weapons dealer with Victor Maitland from Beverly Hills Cop. That is another good example that Odo wants to do something because this is wrong, but he's not doing anything because it's all holodeck weapons. That's another great back and forth between those two characters. I like that one.
Yes, I agree with that entirely. It's interesting because I don't think that Quark being in a jail would have really satisfied Odo.
No,
all things considered.
I think you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that it would have brought him the kind of joy that he thought he was looking for. Like I said earlier, I think that this is the dance that they went through. I think that this is what these characters eventually fell into. And honestly, I think it worked. And if he ever really had jailed Quark, I don't think it would have brought him the sense of satisfaction or closure that he would have hoped for.
I agree. I'm agreeing with you far too much. Maybe it's because of the topic just makes me so happy because it's kind of making me feel like I felt last night at the gym, agreeing with you so much.
It's leaving you unable to breathe and feeling like you're going to die?
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, let's do more of that then.
Good job. Good job, buddy.
It's whenever I rewatch Deep Space Nine now, I pay special attention to these two characters simply because of the nuances that both Renee and Armin bring to these parts. It's like getting a little gift every time I watch them now because I notice things I never observed before. And I'm not just talking about the Ascent. I'm talking about pretty much every episode, every scene that these two characters have together. I honestly think that this is the best relationship in Deep Space Nine, as far as arc, as far as development, as far as interaction, and as far as honestly the way these two characters come together. It's just it's worth watching the Ascent. It's worth watching everything in Deep Space Nine just for these two characters.
Here's a question for you, and I know we say this every time we talk about characters. Nobody could have played these characters except these people. But we know from our discussions with Andy Robinson that he actually auditioned for the part of Odo. Do you think it would have worked as good with Andy Robinson as Odo as it did with Renee?
Wow, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's state for the record, Andy Robinson is an amazing actor.
Oh, God, he's so good.
He's played such a wide variety of characters, and all of them have been fantastic, from horror to comedy to drama to serial killer to Cardassian Taylor. I think it would have been good. Yep. I just think it would have been markedly different.
It's interesting they say that because here's my take on it. If Andy played Odo and Renee played Garrick, neither one of them would have worked for me, based on what I've seen as each person playing their respective characters. Now, maybe that's because I'm looking at it with Deep Space Nine glasses and I know what each character has done in the 7 seasons of the show, but I just can't see it working as well, especially with the relationship with Odo and Quark. If it was Andy, because nobody can play Garrick besides Andy Robinson. And I just don't think that anybody else besides Renee could have pulled off the things that he did as Odo. Like I said, shaded glasses, possibly, but that's just the way I see it.
Let me throw a curveball at you.
Oh.
What if Renee had played Quark and Armin had played Odo?
Right off the bat, I'd have to say no. I don't think it would have worked. But I can't. But then again, I'm trying to picture Renee as a Ferengi and Armin as a changeling, and I just can't because of what we're used to seeing. Let's keep it as it is. How about that? No reality switches today. No Kelvin timeline mistakes or changes in the timeline, I should say.
No Deep Space Nine Freaky Friday. Hashtag DS9 Freaky Friday. Well, Dan, that's kind of our look at Odo and Quark. I really think it's worth it to go back and watch The Ascent if people are progressing through their Deep Space Nine rewatches, and it's coming up soon. Just really savor this episode. It's season 5, episode 9. Premiered, I think, right after Thanksgiving or right before Thanksgiving in 1996. And it is so good. I mean, it's. I don't think this is a script that doesn't work for any other series in Star Trek with any other of Star Trek characters. Mm-hmm. It is specifically tailored to Odo and Quark, and it is worth the hour. I guarantee it.
I'll have to double check what Mr. Morehouse ranks it at Trek ranks for Deep Space Nine episodes. I think it might be in my top 10.
Wow, that's high praise, and I can appreciate that because it is fantastic. Mm. As you look that up, I'm going to say that something else that's fantastic, Dan, is the band 5 Year Mission, our great friends who have just released their Year 4 album. That's right, brand new 5YM tracks in your ear holes. You can get them today by going to 5yearmission.net. I love this album. Dan loves this album. People universally love this album. Why? Because it is 5 Star Trek fans that have written original compositions to celebrate Star Trek. This isn't a parody band. This isn't making fun of Star Trek. This is giving you a new way to watch Star Trek episodes and a creative outlet, by which to look at them. So go get Year 4. Seriously, you're going to love it. You're going to love 5 Year Mission, and you're going to thank us, as people have already done on Twitter within the last few weeks. So that's 5yearmission.net. Go get yourself some tunes, yo.
Tunes. I love tunes. 86 is the rank for The Ascent on Trek ranks. That's a little disappointing. I'm going to have to talk to Jim about that. But anyway, we're talking about 5 Year Mission right now. So the hell with Jim Morehouse, okay? I'm going to say that. Yes. But you know what, Bill? We do love 5 Year Mission, like you said. And I got to tell you, you might be upset at this and you might not be, but I'm going to tell you anyway because you're my friend and you're my friend. Earlier, we discussed our new business venture, as you remember. And, we're both so proud and we're excited about the future. We're so much so that I decided to create a different company. And I hope you don't mind that I set it up without you so that I could surprise you for it. Is that okay?
Wow. So already you're shutting me out. We haven't even had a board meeting. This is amazing.
I know. Well, it would be a different board meeting and you'll still be right up there on the board, but it's going to be a music label company, buddy. And only the best artists are going to be able to get together to jam and play their greatest hits. And I'm kind of hoping that one band in particular will be the one that we sign first. So I am proud to announce the creation of Coconut Media Farks. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba.
Wow. Wow. The company's, the ink's not even dry on the paperwork, for God's sake, man.
It was such a great idea. I had to run with it. So maybe I'll just keep running.
Please, across state lines. That would be fantastic. So yeah, that's 5yearmission.net. Please go get all their tunes. Trust us, you're going to love it. Dan, next week, we're going to talk about something that we probably should have talked about before now.
You think? I'm thinking so. What took you so long to come up with this idea, buddy? It's been 3 years, and we've talked a lot of Star Trek, but there's one character that we have never mentioned, and next week, we're going to fix that, you and I. She is a central figure in several of the live-action series, and next week on Trek Geeks, your independent Star Trek podcast, we will discuss the Starship Enterprise.
Oh, she's a beautiful lady, and we love her. And we're not just going to talk about an Enterprise. We're going to talk about starships named Enterprise. So next week, I think that's going to be pretty exciting. We're going to talk about all kinds of Enterprise related stuff, including probably the one on Enterprise. I think that would probably be pretty fitting, eh?
That's smart thinking on your part. You're a genius.
Yeah, I do okay. Dan, for more great Star Trek discussion, we want to remind everyone to check out the Tricorder Transmissions. They're online at the tricordertransmissions.com. You know, Dan, as we record this, STLV is a mere 8 weeks away. 8 weeks. So time for everybody to head on out to Tricorder Transmissions and download Shore Leave and prep to maximize your convention fun. Shore Leave is just tantamount to my fan experience in conventions, and it's provided so much great information. They have a great STLV 101 set of podcasts from last year that is just fantastic information if you've never been to Star Trek Las Vegas. So that's the tricordertransmissions.com. Head on out there and listen to all of their fine shows. We really would appreciate it. Of course, for all the news on all the Star Treks, please visit our great friends at treknews.net. For now, this has been episode 141 of the Trek Geeks podcast. We do hope you all live long and prosper.
Coconut meter works.
What was that?
I really have no idea.
You could just say, coconut.
Coconut. Music for Trek Geeks is provided by 5 Year Mission. They're writing one song for each episode of the original series. Download their music at 5yearmission.net. Trek Geeks, a Star Trek podcast, is a production of Coconut Media Works, executive producer Bill Smith. For even more Star Trek discussion, check out Discovering Trek, a Star Trek Discovery companion, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and discoveringtrek.com.
Bing bong. You sound a little dead.
Last night was the worst experience of my life, but I'm glad I made it through it, and I'm glad I finished it.
We're talking about the gym for anybody that is curious. I didn't make it because my foot was really hurting, so I decided to take a night off, but I looked at that board and dude, even my wife said that was hardcore.
It was hardcore, but not as hardcore as the after the board. You have the final 5 minutes. That was, they broke us up into 2 teams of 16 people each, and each people lines of 4. So 4 stations on each team. And the first thing we did was the ski pole thing.
The skier, yeah.
The skier, yeah. And I love that. That was great. I was killing that. I think our row had the most reps. And then we switched over to the wall climber. And cardio, or whatever the hell you want to call it. Well, we had, I don't know how many minutes of that. And we usually would do 10 seconds as much as we could, and then we'd switch off to the next person in 10 seconds. Well, it got close to the end, and there was 28 seconds when I got on for the last time, and I just went the whole time so that we wouldn't waste seconds by switching off. I thought I was going to die, and it took me like 2 hours to feel normal again.
You were such a dummy.
I mean, the reason, and part of the challenge was, one team had to win both, or else both teams had to do 20 burpees. I laid on the floor like dying for the entire time everybody else was doing burpees. I couldn't do them.
So the Versa Climber, which you're referring to, did you know that is the chosen cardio equipment for the Navy SEALs?
Well, I hope they all felt the way I did after I got off that thing last night.
I'm sure they felt light years better.
Man. But as I posted on Facebook today, I didn't eat anything all day. I had one little thing of cottage cheese at lunch, and that's it. And then I went and worked out and like pushed myself more than I ever have. And I think that definitely played a part of it.
Oh, it played a huge part in it. I always have something before I get to the gym, probably usually before I leave work. And then I will usually have like a nut butter Cliff Bar pretty much right after, like in my car.
Yeah. At least I went.
Yeah, you're not injured though.
Oh, Oh, I was after that freaking workout. I was.
Yeah.
Plus, the whole thing we did on the board was killer. I did chin-ups, which I never thought I'd ever be able to do. And at one point, I think I did 7 in one setting, which with my mass, I never thought I'd be able to do. So I was pretty happy.
That's fantastic.
But enough about that. Your face is fantastic.
That's actually true.
I know.
Yeah. You know what show I've been hooked on lately, catching up on the Hulu, is Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
That show is so funny.
I have never watched an episode. When it first came out, the commercials, my wife and I were like, this looks like the stupidest thing ever. But this past season, they had some commercials where somebody was singing Copacabana in front of a dead body. And for some reason, that always made me laugh hysterically. So I might have to check it out.
It's I think Fox runs into the problem where it just gets to a point where it doesn't know what to do with particular shows. I think Arrested Development, the first 3 seasons went through this. I think anything sci-fi on Fox has been through this. But Brooklyn Nine-Nine is just smart, and it's fast-paced, and it's funny, and it works. I didn't think I would like it as much as I do, but I laugh genuinely every time I watch it. Are you still there? Hello?
Hi.
What happened?
I had to mute because I was coughing. I thought this was going to be the first time in a month where I didn't have a coughing fit, but I had a coughing fit.
I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, crickets. I wish I had a cricket sound effect. I would have put it in there going. I'm like, did I lose him? Is he like not got internet?
Sorry. I was going to say that we just got done watching episode 5 of Bosch season 4. Wow,
you're way behind.
I am. Well, we like to pace ourselves so that we're not like really, using it all up real fast. We like to, watch it, once a week or something like that.
Yeah, so you're a quitter. Okay.
Like in the old days.
Yeah, the old days are gone, baby doll.
That's why they're old.
That's why they're old. You're a
pie.
dinosaur. You're a dinosaur.
Speaking of dinosaur, I cannot wait for June 22nd.
Why?
For Jurassic World.
No interest.
Oh my God. The movie of the summer for me. I can't wait to see it.
Really? How many different ways can you do dinosaurs, which man had a hand in recreating and never should have, tear up a park and a bunch of people? How many different times can you do that? The
new preview has like one of the T-Rexes like nose to nose with a lion at a zoo, and it looks awesome. Yeah, I like it.
I was kind of lost after Jurassic Park 2.
I like Jurassic Park 2. Not a lot of people do.
It's not great.
I like it.
3 is worse.
Oh, I love 3.
One is still the gold standard. I mean, 1 is a great story because it's the first time you're immersed in that world. And that's the thing is I don't see how they can make it a world when it's, oops, we made dinosaurs and now they're eating people. What do we do?
I will say, did you see the first Jurassic World, the last movie?
No, I had no interest.
Dude, it was phenomenal. It was absolutely great. If you can get by the part where the girl's running in her high heels, which I don't care about, but everybody seems to have a problem with, it might be one of the best ones. I absolutely love that one. You got to see it.
I've never run in high heels, but I have to imagine that if I'm about to be attacked by a dinosaur, I'm going to run in whatever I'm wearing on my feet.
But she does a good job running in high heels, but everybody says, oh, no, that's that she's running too slow. The T-Rex would have got her, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. It's a great scene. I love it. Good movie. Check it out. Watch it. Love it.
T-Rexes aren't bright, just like you.
Wow.
Boom.
That was my T-Rex roar.
Oh my God, that was horrible. You sounded like you were passing a kidney stone.
I've done that. It's not fun.
Oh, is that why you have that look on your face all the time?
Yeah. No, that's because I have to commute with you.
You need to stick to impersonations of people because you're better at those.
All right. I'm not going to do one right now, though. I just don't feel like it.
Although now this is the perfect time for me to go, Velociraptors, where?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Thank
Listeners
you.
are going to love that.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, listeners. Appreciate it. We do this all for you, you know.
So let's hope we don't keep doing that for them. We won't have any left. You ready to do this there, the Velociraptor King?
Let's do it. Oh, I like that title. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's do it.
What are you really trying to say?